Hey, Aaron.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Yeah, good man. How are you?
Very good, very good. Where are you right now? Are you in the
I'm,
States or are
I'm
you?
no, I'm in New York. Yeah, I'm in New York now because
Okay,
for the kind of opening of the film this evening.
awesome. Outstanding. Well, I just wanted to start by asking you this, and I don't want to talk about 1917, but I am going to mention it. So most people know you, a lot of folks know you because of your outstanding work in that, Best Picture nominated film. But it got me to thinking when I was looking at your filmography, you've really gravitated towards indie fare and stage theater. And 1917 was sort of an outlier in the blockbuster sense. And I just wondered, is that something that you have maybe not had as many opportunities to do when it comes to bigger budget type films, or are you naturally just drawn to these smaller scale productions, kind of like Wolf is?
It's a bit of a mixture, to be honest. I think my taste is I love indie cinema, and I think the characters that I'm intrigued in playing, and I've been lucky enough to play, and also the way in which they're kind of put across, like the way in which the stories are told. It happens more in the sort of indie world, I guess. Um, and then that's it. And then and again, but I'm sure I've auditioned for a bunch of big films which I just haven't got. So you know,
So it's
so
not off the table, right? Like eventually you could see yourself doing some more of that as well.
it's like I feel so blessed to have sort of any element of choice in my work. And to be honest, the choice is just about the story and the process as well. The process of making the film is almost as big as the story, kind of about what the process will teach you. So like the process of figuring out how to play a man who is an animal and to do that in my own body, or like working with Justin Cazell, like Snowtown was the most affected I've ever been in a cinema. So the opportunity of working with Justin and the process that he demanded, which he sort of set out early on, it's the way he wanted to make that character was like as big as the reason of the story itself. And in a sense that with 1917, I mean, I'd do anything to sort of work with Sam Mendes full stop, but it was an added thing that it was like the idea was is that the part of the process would be like we're going to tell a film to appear in one shot, and therefore we have to choreograph the entire thing beforehand, which means that you will have to have an understanding of the entire workings of the crew in a way that you haven't before. And so all of those things, it's about process as much as story, I think.
Awesome. That's really cool. So, did you know Natalie before this film? Were you familiar with her? How did you get attached to Wolf?
So the first thing that came through was the script. I hadn't seen Natalie's film Nocturnal. It was yet to come out actually, but I read this. There was a kind of a the script. I got to read the script, and there was like a document as well that sort of outlined Natalie's vision for it, the way in which she wanted to work, and part of that was working with this amazing movement coach called Terry Notary, who I don't know. Have you seen The Square? You know
Oh yeah,
that
well,
that
I'm
that
very
amazing.
familiar with Terry. Terry's
Oh,
amazing. He's Rocket in the Planet of the Apes. He's
yeah, of course. Like, where he's yeah. That was always part of it as well, as to work with Terry to kind of find the animal side of the character. Um, and then having sort of read that and loving the script, I watched Nocturnal, Natalie's first film, and I just thought it was amazing. And I loved how she told that story, what she did with it, and thought she just was like an amazing director. So I was dying to be part of it, having kind of taken in all of that material.
Is this a situation where do you get a script and you're reading for this position, the role of Jacob as the wolf, or are you just auditioning or reading to kind of be one of the animals in the film and you don't know until you get later into the process?
It kind of it changes with every project, the audition process and how you read, and but for this I was lucky enough to know that it was for Jacob kind of straight away. So yeah, it was always Jacob in mind and the wolf in mind as much as Jacob.
Well, there's two parts to that performance I really want to talk about. And of course, it's amazing. It is really a phenomenal performance. I think you carry the film in a big way and you're just mesmerizing. So thank you for what you gave us.
Very
But
much.
there's the vocal part of it that is fascinating to me. I was listening to an interview with George Clooney just the other day, and he mentioned how much actors in general love dialogue and love speaking. Like they want these big, bulky speeches and monologues. this is a role that is the exact opposite of that, where you go large parts of this film without speaking at all. And I wondered, like, what was that challenge like for you? How was that different?
It's yeah, Jacob's pretty silent, and so it was. I think with any character, it's a case of sort of building an understanding of them that is kind of personal to you, so that you know how to be, especially if the script isn't articulating your thoughts or articulating your character for you. And the big thing, that was a huge part of it, to be honest. Natalie kind of showed me a number of different references. I mean, the core was always just him and just the kind of what he was going through and the backstory and how he was feeling, but then also kind of references as to real people, and performances as well, where there's the kind of, you feel the kind of inner life burning, but there is just no access to it. And we did a lot of work in kind of improvisations as well, about kind of figuring out how he put his wall up as well, because he's sort of so protected. And Terry did a lot of work with that in the sort of animal nature of things, of kind of, it's kind of very ephemeral, the kind of work that he was doing. But there's this really amazing stuff about, he would talk about front mind, middle mind, back mind, and about when you're sort of like at the front of your thoughts or sort of trying to put yourself across, then when you're sort of observing someone, and then when you're absolutely, you've got the shutters down in front, all kind of without moving back and forth. It's a sort of mindset as to like, and it's like a mood change. I think, you know, when someone says something about your family and suddenly you kind of go, I'm not talking to you anymore. And you don't have to say anything, but you feel the temperature in the room change of like, you feel when someone's crossed a boundary or when someone's ignited something, you feel the back and forth in people. And that was a big part in kind of developing Jacob, is to sort of be able to go through those levels of his kind of walls and the back and forth, because there's no dialogue. And I don't know, I just find that fascinating. So it's sort of, I didn't miss the words.
That's awesome. What about the physical part of it? So obviously Terry Notary, like you said, famous mocap artist as well, and you're not doing that. You don't have diodes all over you, I assume, while you're performing these roles. So what was it like training for the physical part of this performance? Because I wish I could show you. I had it. I may try and pull it up while you're answering the question, but I have a picture of my dog while we were watching you.
Right.
And because I was watching a screener at home, and he's at the screen barking his butt off, and he's trying to get to you. You're on all fours in this scene, and he fully bought into your performance. So if that's, take that as a compliment. He thought you were a wolf. So, but what was it like to, I guess, train for that, especially during a pandemic?
To be honest, the pandemic, not to sort of like, piggyback a pretty terrible situation, but like the pandemic gave us a lot more time than we initially had. And we had this one-off week with myself, Natalie, and Terry to develop the animal side of the movement, to kind of just to workshop, what is this wolf? How much are we? Because it was all still a bit up in the air as to like, well, do we want him sort of, is it a feeling, or is he literally crawling? Or if he is crawling, how do we shoot that? Because are you able to crawl and all that kind of stuff? And we had this week where we found all of this stuff about his movement, his howl. And it was hard, like keeping your back flat and your bum down and your knees tucked was really difficult. And I could only do it for 10-second bursts or something. And we were going to have a 2-week break and then begin the production with a 3-week rehearsal period and then filming. And in that 2 weeks, the pandemic hit, and Ireland and the UK all got locked down, and the film got pushed for three months or something. But over that time, it was kind of like, we always knew that was going to be the first thing that we were doing when we came back. So I was blessed. I just crawled around my there we are. I think I've got it here. I just crawled around my garden lot, crawled around the local park, and just because it was like getting fit, it's like training for something, it's like anything, the more you do it, I think the better you get at it. So I'm just oh wow, that's great. Great.
He was fully bought in. I mean, he wanted to get in there and rub with you. I think he was ready to go.
I want to spend time with Gimli.
What about the howling? So you do some howling in this movie. Did you have to howl in your apartment or in your house? Like, were you?
That was the harder thing to practice. I remember coming to Natalie and being like, when we started rehearsals, being like, I haven't done as much work on the howl because it's just a bit awkward at home, you know. But no, but that was like, I'm glad you mentioned it, because even that was like a thing of like, okay, cool. So he's howling rather than just a generic howl. Like, what is a howl and what is it to me? And also that thing of like, well, I made the choice that to me, Jacob is a wolf. He is a wolf trapped in a human body. And that was the only way to sort of be pure to the character, even if at the end of the day, he might not be a wolf, but he's so, you know, whether it's a commitment or a spiritual connection or whatever it is, that's what he is to him. So that's what I was for him, sort of thing. And therefore kind of going, okay, well, what is a howl? Like, what do wolves mean when they howl? And again, all the research that you can do is essentially a human interpretation of a wolf's howl, but there is some amazing stuff about kind of who they're calling to. And I kind of cherry picked all the stuff that made sense kind of emotionally and theatrically to Jacob's story, and what, you know, the call to someone, the call to your kin, the call to a partner, the call to the, you know, a call to of connection. And kind of came up with it, and then was like, okay, well, if I have got human lungs, why don't I just try and make a sound that speaks to that, whether it's that loneliness or a call for help or whatever it is. And then once I'd sort of found that sound in the way that like singers, like great singers, just like Jeff Buckley and stuff, I was like, listen, I used to be a big Jeff Buckley, I'm a big Jeff Buckley fan. And some of his stuff, you're like, he's speaking to something, he's speaking to his soul or my soul, or there's something that he's doing. And kind of going, okay, well, so trying to sort of find noises in song that kind of related to the emotional side of things, and then kind of going back to the howl, and then just listening to a ton of wolf howls and trying to kind of amalgamate those sounds that I'd found with all the very different howls that they're, you know, the recordings of wolves, you know, howling, and kind of trying to bring that all together in this sort of perfect, not perfect, but in this mix that is Jacob, where, because he is both, you know.
Oh, that's great. What about your work with Lily Rose Depp? So there's some scenes in this specifically that feel like a choreographed primal mating dance. What was that like, trying to film those? Was that awkward? Was it easy?
So, like, thanks to Lily Rose, it wasn't. And that was one of the best things about working with Lily, is she's just wonderful as a person and as an actress. And the biggest thing was, like, she was so committed to what we were doing. Everyone was just throwing themselves at it. And that just gave you this trust with each other and with the project, because yeah, those would have been weird scenes to do if you for any point felt like someone wasn't into it as well, or like second guessing it or ridiculing it. Like, there was only ever a kind of similar pursuit as to like, well, how can we do this? This is like, I love the idea of this. Like, what is this? And so that scene particularly, to be honest, was like one of the biggest things for Lily and I, as a kind of, it was almost like an exercise or a wee journey for us to kind of go on to find the choreography of that scene. And we had Terry for the first 3 weeks of the production in Ireland, and for the 3-week rehearsal process. And we would particularly work on that scene and versions of, you know, all the different elements of it, like the kind of the extremes of like a very primal sort of the sexual desire, or like a kind of platonic desire, or an animal desire, and then the levels of those, and then also like how you got that, and connection. And oh God, I could speak forever about it, but like that sort of, we used to kind of keep coming back. It was almost like a drill in training, like at a sports drill or something like that. You know, you kind of go, let's keep practicing that set piece, because we'll find stuff in the practice where we'll go down a road and we'll kind of get to a blockage, and that will point us left, and or like the fucking George Bush there, like left or right. You know,
Yeah.
that will point us, that will take us to the next thing. And it kind of unlocked all this stuff to become the scene that it was, you know, which was a sort of choreographed improvisation in the end.
Well, it works great. I mean, it's incredibly effective. Love you guys together in that. What is one thing you learned on set for this film that you're going to take forward with you in the future in your work?
In working out the wolf side of the animal side of things before even the wolf, is in workshopping that, it felt like, what is it to be wild, and what is it to be less human? And we kind of set upon this idea of clearing your mind of thought that I think that humans, we exist so much in our heads, and that every desire, instinct, primal, every sort of primal thing that we all have in us, because we are all animals, is sort of socialized. And it's the head that kind of is the checker, for better or for worse, kind of goes, nope, 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 but this might happen. And it kind of, you start tailoring everything to kind of, your head is in control of everything. And I found that it was the thing that I've learned basically is how much my head kind of contributes to my day, and how amazing it felt to kind of be outside of it sometimes, and how clear it was. And so sort of quietening down the noise if I can in my head, and kind of going off the sort of the feelings that quiet kind of gives you, is definitely something I'll take away.
Awesome. Well, I've got one more and it'll be quick, I think. So on my podcast, Feel and Film, we approach movies from an emotional perspective. We love to talk about like how we react and how we emote when it comes to our response to a film. So I wanted to ask, do you have any recommendations for us? What's a movie that particularly moves you in an emotional way? One of your favorites. It could be any sort of emotion, but what is something that really gets underneath your skin and just really makes you feel?
Got two. Like one from childhood is The Lion King. Is that?
Oh, that's appropriate, because your scenes in this literally look like The Lion King at times.
I think like, Simba with his dad in that. Always as a kid, I was gone. E.T. did it, like, killed me. But then I guess as a sort of more adult indie film, Blue Valentine was like, I think to witness a love falling apart is devastating, and to see it done like it was in that film is devastating. So maybe Blue Valentine.
Great choices. And I love the dichotomy there between them as well, and the way that they portray different emotions. So thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the time.
It's so good to speak to you. That was really, really interesting questions my end as well. So like really nice to speak about the film. It means a lot. Thanks, man.
Great. Well, have a good time on the rest of your tour.
Cheers, Aaron. Yeah, take care, mate.